I just found out my wife's affair with her boss was a cover-up for a $500, $0 embezzlement, and now she's suing me for half our house and retirement savings, all while I discover she's been planning to disappear with everything. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, staring at a mess I never saw coming. It all started with little things, her being more distant, secretive about her phone, hiding her texts behind fake passwords. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed at work or maybe just tired. We'd been married for 10 years, and honestly, I thought we knew everything about each other. Turns out, I was dead wrong. It was a Thursday evening when I noticed she was acting weird. Sarah, my wife, had always been a bit bitchy, but this was different. She snapped at me over nothing, her eyes darting to her phone every few minutes like she was hiding something. I asked her what was wrong, and she brushed it off with her typical sass, "Nothing's wrong, I'm just tired, leave me alone." But I knew better. Women don't just get bitchy for no reason, especially not this consistently. The real clue was her phone. I'd caught her sneaking around with it during dinner, typing frantically, then quickly locking the screen when I looked over. I asked her about it and she rolled her eyes, saying she was just texting her sister. That didn't sit right with me, so I decided to dig a little. I waited until she went to bed, then grabbed her phone when she was asleep. That's when I saw the messages, flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up after work, calling each other babe. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe it. My wife, Sarah, was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. But that's not even the worst part. I started digging deeper, and what I found out next blew my mind. Turns out, the affair was just the cover-up for something much darker, an embezzlement scheme that involved $500,000 from her company. She'd been funneling money into her own accounts, hiding it under fake invoices and planning to disappear with everything. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a stupid affair. She'd been planning to leave me with nothing, maybe even worse. I confronted her the next morning. I sat her down, showed her the messages, the bank statements, the fake invoices I'd found. Her face turned red, then white. She stammered, lying through her teeth. "It's not what you think," she said. "Mark and I are just having sex. It's not about money. You're overreacting." Of course, she everything, but I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she avoided my gaze, the way she kept saying she loved me, but her actions told a different story. That moment hit me hard. I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. I trusted her for years, built a life with her, and it was all a lie. I started questioning everything, our marriage, her loyalty, the future. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she cheat on me with her boss, steal from her own company, and then try to spin it like I was the crazy one? It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't escape. The emotional was brutal. I went from feeling numb to furious, then to deeply hurt. I kept replaying every moment, every sign I missed. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was knowing she'd been planning to wipe me out, to take everything we had, our house, our savings, our retirement. She's a bitch, honestly. She's always been good at lying, but this was next level. The fact that she was willing to do all this and then turn around and accuse me of being paranoid, that just made it worse. Now I'm at a crossroads. I don't know whether to fight for the marriage, to try and rebuild what's broken, or to cut my losses and walk away. Part of me still loves her, but another part knows I can't trust her anymore. The betrayal is too deep. I've been left with a mess, and I don't even know where to start cleaning it up. All I know is, I'll never see her the same way again, and I definitely won't be able to ignore the fact that she's been planning her escape for months. I guess I'll figure out what's next eventually. But right now, I just feel exhausted, like I'm carrying a weight I can't shake off. I trusted her, and she threw it all away for money, for some stupid affair, and for her own damn convenience. It's a nightmare I never expected, and honestly, I don't know how I'm going to get through it. After I confronted her that morning, everything changed. Sarah, my wife, looked at me with this fake innocence, like I was some kind of crazy guy overreacting. She kept insisting that the affair with Mark was just sex, that it didn't mean anything beyond that. She said she loved me, that she was just stressed and needed some excitement. Yeah, right, as if I was born yesterday. The way she lied, so effortlessly, so convincingly, it made me realize just how good she was at hiding the truth. But I wasn't buying any of her bullshit anymore. I had the bank statements, the fake invoices, the messages. I knew she'd been planning this for months, probably even longer. That's when I started piecing things together, how she'd been acting distant, secretive, and how she kept making excuses for her behavior. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could she betray me like this? After all we'd been through, after building a life together, she just threw it all away for some cheap sex and a pile of stolen money. Her reaction to my discovery was classic Sarah. She turned on the tears, said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. When I pressed her about the money, she claimed she was just trying to protect us, that Mark was just a distraction, not the real issue. But I knew better. I saw the fake invoices she'd hidden in her email drafts, the bank transfers she'd made to offshore accounts. She was planning to vanish with $500,000, and she wanted me to be none the wiser until it was too late. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd always thought she was the one person I could trust. Turns out she was just a manipulative bitch, willing to do anything to get what she wanted: money, freedom, maybe even a new life with Mark. The betrayal cut deep. I felt like my entire world was collapsing around me. I was furious, yes, but also heartbroken. How could she do this to me, to us? All those years, all the promises, and now I find out she's been lying, cheating, stealing right under my nose. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I'd uncovered. I started thinking about the future. What do I do now? Do I fight for the marriage? Do I try to save what's left? Or do I just walk away and forget about her? The idea of losing everything, our house, our savings, my retirement, made me sick. But more than that, I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. I'd trusted her, and she'd used that trust to manipulate me, to hide her dirty secrets. I decided I couldn't just let this go. I needed a plan. I started thinking about how I could get back at her, how I could make her pay for what she'd done. I wasn't just going to let her walk away with everything. If she thought she could steal $500,000, cheat on me, and then sue me for half our house and savings, she was dead wrong. I was going to fight her every step of the way. I didn't care if it meant tearing her world apart. She deserved it. She'd played dirty, so I'd play dirty back. The next day I reached out to a lawyer. I wanted to know what my rights were, what I could do to protect myself. The lawyer told me she was already planning to sue me for half the house and our retirement savings. I couldn't believe it. She was so cold and calculating, even now, trying to take everything I had worked for. I knew I had to stay one step ahead. I started gathering evidence, digging into our financials, and looking for anything that could prove her plans to disappear with the money. Throughout all this, I felt a mix of emotions: rage, disbelief, and a sinking sense of betrayal. I'd always believed we had a good life, a stable marriage. Turns out it was just a house of cards waiting to collapse. I thought about her lying to me every day, pretending everything was fine, while she was secretly planning her escape. That thought made my blood boil. How could she be so selfish, so manipulative? And yet I also felt sadness, sadness that it had come to this, that I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. I kept asking myself, how did it all go so wrong? Was I blind? Did I miss all the signs? Maybe I was just too trusting. Maybe I should have seen the cracks earlier. Now all I could do was brace myself for what was coming next. I knew she was planning to disappear, probably with the money, with Mark, with everything we'd built. And I was determined not to let her get away with it without a fight. I decided I'd fight her in court, fight for my rights, and make her regret ever crossing me. I wasn't going down without a fight, not after everything. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about proving that I wasn't some fool who got played. I'd make her pay, one way or another. Over the next few days, I threw myself into action. I couldn't just sit around and watch her plan her escape. I started compiling every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, emails, invoices, her phone records. I even managed to get hold of some security footage from her office building, which showed her meeting Mark late at night more times than I could count. Every piece of data pointed to her guilt, and I knew I had to use it to fight back. The more I dug, the more furious I became. She'd been so careful, so calculated, hiding everything behind fake invoices, offshore accounts, and secret meetings. She convinced herself she was clever enough to get away with it all. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I contacted a lawyer I found through a friend, someone who specialized in financial crimes and divorce law. I wanted to make sure I had the best shot at protecting what was mine. My lawyer, David, was a no-nonsense guy. When I explained everything, he looked at me with a serious face. "You've got a good case," he said. "She's trying to hide assets, and her plan to disappear with the money could be considered fraud or embezzlement. We can freeze her accounts, subpoena her emails, and even get a court order to prevent her from selling the house or draining the retirement funds. But you need to be prepared for a fight. She's going to dig in her heels." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time. I knew she'd be dangerous, though. Sarah always had a way of manipulating people, twisting stories, and lying her way out of trouble. She'd been good at that for years, but I was sick of feeling powerless. I decided I'd fight fire with fire. I'd expose her for what she really was, a thief, a cheat, a liar, and I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. Meanwhile, I started planning my next move. I knew she'd try to spin this in court, claim I was paranoid, or that I'd been abusive or controlling. That's her typical tactic: blame everyone else, deny everything, and hope the truth goes away. But I had enough evidence to blow her cover. I also made some calls to a private investigator, someone who could help me find out if she was planning to leave the country or stash the money somewhere else. I needed to catch her red-handed before she could make her move. In the meantime, she kept up her act, acting innocent, accusing me of being jealous or paranoid, telling me I was overreacting. But her facade was cracking. I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed lies. She started acting more frantic, more desperate. She'd yell at me for snooping, call me paranoid, and then go out of her way to act like everything was fine. That's when I knew she was panicking, that she knew I was closing in. One night, I caught her trying to delete some files from her laptop. I snuck into her office and found her trying to wipe all the financial documents. I grabbed her laptop and took screenshots of what she'd deleted. That was the smoking gun I needed. I knew she was planning to destroy evidence, but I'd already saved everything. I felt a mix of satisfaction and disgust. She thought she could outsmart me, but she was just making things worse for herself. The emotional toll was heavy. I was angry, yes, but also hurt. I'd trusted her for so long, and now I realized she'd been lying to my face all this time. The woman I married was a con artist, a thief, a manipulative bitch. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her get away with this for so long. Every morning I woke up feeling more betrayed, more determined to fight back. I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about reclaiming my life from her lies. I had to find a way to stop her from disappearing with everything. Her plan was probably to move out of the country, maybe even leave me with nothing. I couldn't let that happen. I was ready to go to court, fight her for the house, the savings, everything. I refused to be a victim of her schemes. Every step I took made me realize how much I'd underestimated her. She always played the victim, always acted innocent, but her actions told a different story. I'd been blind, but now I was finally seeing her true face. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. I had to be smart, ruthless even, to protect what's mine. And I was just getting started. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal meetings, surveillance, and gathering every shred of evidence I could find. I wasn't going to let her slip away with $500,000 or our house without a fight. I knew she was planning her big move, probably trying to hide the money in some offshore account or stash it somewhere she thought I wouldn't find. But I had my ways, and I wasn't going to let her get away with this easily. I hired a forensic accountant to dig into her financial records. The guy was sharp, and within a few days he uncovered a tangled web of transactions, fake invoices, shell companies, and transfers that looked like they were designed to hide assets. Every new detail made me angrier. She'd been so meticulous, so sneaky, thinking she was untouchable. But I could see through her lies now. She'd been planning to disappear with everything, and she thought she could leave me with nothing. Meanwhile, Sarah was still trying to keep up her act, pretending everything was fine, accusing me of being paranoid, saying I was overreacting. But I saw through her. She was panicked and her behavior was getting more erratic. She'd blow up at me over nothing, then retreat into her shell, avoiding my questions. I knew she was trying to buy time, trying to come up with some way to cover her tracks. One day, I caught her trying to access her offshore accounts from her phone. She was so desperate she didn't even bother hiding her tracks. I managed to screenshot her login details before she could log out. That was the moment I realized I had her dead to rights. She'd been so confident that she could cheat the system and me, but she'd left enough clues behind. I now had the proof I needed to freeze her accounts and stop her from moving any of the money abroad. I also found out she'd scheduled a meeting with her lawyer, probably to discuss her next move, maybe to try and claim she was the victim. I knew she'd try to spin it that way, but I was ready. I had a plan to file for an emergency court order to freeze all her assets, including the house, the bank accounts, and the retirement funds. I wanted to make sure she couldn't run off with anything before I could get a fair hearing. The emotional toll was mounting. I felt betrayed, furious, and exhausted. How could she do this? I kept replaying every moment, her lies, her sneaky glances, her manipulative words. It was like waking up from a nightmare, realizing the woman I loved was just a con artist. I'd always thought she was the one, the perfect wife, but she was just a thief hiding behind a pretty face. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind for so long. I started questioning everything, our marriage, my judgment, myself. How did I not see this coming? How did I miss the signs? Maybe I'd been too trusting, too naive. But now I was angry at her for wasting so much of my time and energy. I was angry at myself for not noticing sooner. Mostly I was furious because she'd been planning her escape while pretending to be the perfect wife. She'd been lying to my face and I'd been too blind to see it. She tried to keep up the charade, sending me fake apology texts, saying she'd changed, that she loved me. But I knew better. Her words were hollow, empty promises. She was just trying to buy time to make me feel guilty so I'd back down. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I had enough evidence to bring her down, and I was ready to do whatever it took. I also started talking to some friends, people who knew her, who knew how she operated. They told me stories I never knew, how she'd lied about her job, how she'd been secretly planning to leave for months. It all clicked into place. She'd been planning her escape for a long time, and I was just the last obstacle in her way. I realized I needed to act fast before she could vanish with everything. The worst part was knowing she'd been so manipulative, so convincing. She lied about her feelings, about her intentions. She made me doubt myself, made me question whether I was overreacting. But now I saw the truth. She was a thief, a liar, a user, and I was determined to stop her. I wasn't going to let her take my life, my money, my house, everything I'd worked for, without a fight. I knew she'd try to spin it in court, paint me as the bad guy, but I had the evidence. I had the proof. And I was ready to go all the way to make sure I got what was rightfully mine. It's funny how betrayal can turn your whole world upside down in just a few days. I thought I knew her, but I was just a fool. Now I had to be smarter, tougher, more relentless than she ever was. Because if I didn't fight for myself now, I'd lose everything. My house, my savings, my future, and she'd walk away with it all. The court date was set faster than I expected. Sarah, of course, tried to act innocent in her usual bitchy way, denying everything, claiming I was just paranoid, that I was making trouble out of jealousy or some twisted need to control her. She even went as far as to accuse me of being abusive, just to turn the tables and make me look like the bad guy. But I had the evidence and I was ready. I knew her game and I wasn't about to fall for her manipulations again. When the day finally arrived, I walked into the courtroom with everything laid out: bank statements, email exchanges, invoices, her offshore account info, even the security footage of her meetings with Mark. I felt a mix of anger and relief. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. I was going to put an end to her lies and stop her from disappearing with our money. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer presented the evidence. Sarah's face was a mask. of fury, but I saw the cracks in her composure. She was trying to keep her cool, but I could tell she was panicked. She kept trying to deny everything, claiming she was innocent, that I was just a jealous husband with trust issues. The funny thing was, her words sounded so hollow now. The judge wasn't buying her crap. When I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. I explained how Sarah had been embezzling from her company, planning to disappear with the money, and how she'd been lying to me for months. I showed the court her fake invoices, her offshore account login screenshots, and the security footage. The judge looked at her with piercing eyes, clearly unimpressed with her attempts to deny her guilt. In the end, the judge ordered a freeze on her assets, her bank accounts, the house, the retirement funds. She was furious, screaming at the top of her lungs, calling me every name in the book, trying to spin it all as a misunderstanding. But the court saw through her. They knew she'd been planning her escape, and they weren't going to let her get away with it. That day, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I had finally taken control, fought back against her betrayal, and secured my rights. But I also knew that the emotional scars would take longer to heal. She had tried everything to destroy me, her lies, her cheating, her theft, and she'd almost succeeded. I couldn't believe how far gone she was, how she'd used me for her own gain. After the court ruling, I started the process of rebuilding. I filed for divorce, knowing I couldn't stay married to someone who'd lied and cheated for so long. It was hard to let go of the life I thought we had, but I knew it was the only way forward. I also hired a private investigator to track her whereabouts, just in case she tried to run or hide somewhere else. I wasn't going to let her slip away that easily. Throughout this ordeal, I kept asking myself how I'd let her manipulate me for so long. How did I miss all the signs? But deep down, I knew I'd been too trusting too. I'd believed in her, believed we had a future. Now I see that she was just playing me, using my trust against me. That realization stings, but it also makes me more determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. As I sit here reflecting on everything, I realize I've learned a lot about trust, about betrayal, about the importance of being vigilant. I've learned that some people are capable of doing terrible things while smiling to your face. And I've learned that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll never let anyone manipulate or betray me like this again. This experience has changed me. I won't be naive anymore. I'll be cautious, more aware of the signs, and I'll never let my guard down completely. Because trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But I also know there's life after betrayal. I just have to rebuild one step at a time. And I will. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole nightmare has changed me. The woman I thought I knew, Sarah, turned out to be a master manipulator, someone who lied and betrayed me for her own selfish gains. I spent years trusting her, believing in our life together, never suspecting that behind her bitchy attitude and pretty smile was a con artist planning her escape with $500,000, our house, and our future. It's hard to admit how blind I was, but I guess everyone has their blind spots. Mine just happened to be her. Getting through the court process was brutal. Watching her try to spin her lies and deny everything was infuriating. But I had the evidence, and I knew the truth. Seeing her face when the judge ordered her assets frozen, her fury, her helplessness, felt like a small victory. I knew she'd tried to outsmart me, to hide everything, but she underestimated my resolve. I fought for what was mine, not just the money or the house, but my dignity, my sanity. I refused to be a victim of her schemes. Now I'm finally free from her manipulations. The divorce is almost finalized, and I've started to rebuild my life, slowly, painfully, but surely. I'm still working through the betrayal, still angry at her for what she did, but I'm also beginning to accept that some people are just like that, selfish, dishonest, willing to destroy everything for their own benefit. I've learned the hard way that trust isn't something to take lightly, and that some betrayals cut deeper than words can say. I've also learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself. No one else is coming to save you when your world falls apart. You have to stand up, dig in, and do whatever it takes to protect what's yours. That's what I did, and I'm proud of that. I refused to let her win, even if she thought she could steal my future. I've come out the other side more cautious, more aware, and more determined to never let anyone manipulate me again. In the end, I realize that life goes on. The pain will fade, and eventually I'll find happiness again, maybe not with her, but without her. I don't hold on to anger as much as I used to. Instead, I focus on moving forward, learning from this mess. I hope others can see that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can climb back up. And when you do, it's all about standing tall, holding your ground, and protecting what matters most. So here's my advice. Trust carefully, watch for the signs, and never ignore your gut. People can hide who they really are for a long time, but eventually the truth comes out. When it does, don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Because if you don't, no one else will. I've lost a lot, but I've also gained clarity about who I am, what I deserve, and how strong I can be when everything's falling apart. And that strength is what's going to carry me forward.